Hey, it's Jen, and welcome back to the podcast. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jen, writer, podcaster, community builder, and someone who's endlessly fascinated by what it means to be human. Around here, we talk about mental health, healing, mindset, entrepreneurship, relationships, and all the messy, beautiful parts of building a life that actually feels like yours. Today's episode is a little special because we're doing a podcast crossover with David Chametzky, host of the Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat podcast. What started as a simple conversation quickly turned into one of those discussions where you accidentally solve half the world's problems over a cup of coffee. Together, we talk about resilience and coping mechanisms and therapy and self love and grace and what happens when you realize you've spent years surviving, but haven't quite learned how to take care of yourself first. We both share parts of our own mental health journeys, including moments where we genuinely didn't think we'd still be here. And if you've been listening for a while, you know that creating spaces where people can have these conversations openly is incredibly important to me. Whether that's through this podcast, the online networking events I host, the offline get togethers, or the upcoming Great Minds Project, my hope is always the same: that people feel a little less alone and a little more empowered to become who they're meant to be. So, if this conversation resonates with you and you'd like to stick around, come find me over at With Genevieve on social media. Send me a message, share your story, or simply say hi. I genuinely love connecting with you. Also, feel free to forward this episode with other people. For now, take a deep breath, grab your oversized emotional support water bottle, and let's get into today's conversation.
Hey now, how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. And we're also going to do something really special. We're doing like a little handshake across the big old pond. And we're going to bring on my friend Genevieve. And I can't wait to talk to her. She's going to be asking me some questions from her podcast. So we're having a group, session that you're all going to be part of. It's going to be exciting. We talk about mental wellness in this episode. So really, this is a topic that everybody needs to be involved in, and that's why we decided to let's just rip it and go for it. How you doing today?
Oh my God, I'm doing great. I'm like so ready for this. I have my big water bottle, my Stanley over here, and I'm ready to just talk it out, get into the nitty gritty, and yeah, you know, let's get to it.
Okay, so let's just start off. Why don't you explain, ladies first? Who you are and what you do, and then I'll explain to your audience who I am and what I do.
Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, my name is Jen and I podcast and I write, obviously. And yeah, I started a podcast for English speaking countries or English speaking listeners because I really wanted to talk about mental health, mindset, physical health. I wanted to talk with therapists. I wanted to talk with business owners, all that, so that we all collectively learn something. And I started that because with my ex, I was going to move to Toronto, but that didn't happen. I mean, she's my ex now. And at some point, I was like, you know what? I have to do this. I still have to do this. I felt a little something, and ever since I've been doing it, everything started growing and rolling, and I've started meeting all these amazing people all over the internet. I mean, that's also how we met. What a blessing is that? That's so cool. And yeah, I've been podcasting for a couple of years now, actually, but then in Dutch, which, as you know, a lot of people know, is harder to understand, and also, the engagement is lower because there's only 22 million people who speak Dutch on the earth. So it's a little bit harder to get some reach in that. And in English, it's a lot easier. And yeah, I really love what I'm doing and how I'm doing it and how I'm meeting people. And yeah, yet again, how I met you, how I'm making amazing new friends, which is super cool. So yeah, I'm
Oh, it's
here
awesome.
for,
It's one of the things that kind of lead us into that mental wellness. You need to find community and the
yeah,
community that's there to support you. I know we've had other conversations and just had those connections. I know a
yeah.
lot of people say that they're an ally of mental wellness and health, but you really take that next level. You're a caregiver. All these things really come in to play. And what I'll do is let me just quickly uh, introduce myself to your audience. And
Yes, please.
yep, you might hear I'm from New York. That's the accent you hear. So I run a podcast called Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. You might understand peace and love really well, but the Bring a Bat is about bringing awesome thoughts, and that's where Jen and I are going to talk a little bit about mental wellness, and not that that's awesome, but it's how we adjust through those things. I was a recovery advocate, a certified peer recovery advocate. I helped people through recovery, and I still can do that. I just gave up the license. I didn't pursue it because I wanted to do some other things, which included, writing books, getting people on stages, speak for myself about mental wellness on stages, and then align your brand. For those who have businesses, you have to have that your story. Whatever you do, you have your story aligned, and that's
Yes.
among the things I do. And my beautiful podcast, which we're rolling out. We're almost at the 200 episodes in the next. Probably by the time this goes out, we'll already be over 200. And as of today, worldwide, we have almost 90,000 downloads. So it's really, really growing. I've been doing this since 2021, and I love doing it, and I love meeting people like Jen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's so cool. And I love that you also explained the name of your podcast because I actually wanted to ask that because we hadn't discussed that last time when we talked, which was like
well,
an hour and a half, you guys. We talked so much. And that was the one question I didn't ask. And I was like, wait, why is your so I love that. And it's a very original title. So kudos on that because I'm way less creative in that sense. I'm like, yeah, it's the With Jen podcast, whatever.
but it goes to the point, right? You don't have to explain it. That was one of the feedbacks that people had given me. I had two sets of feedback. One from a friend who was like, "Oh, women are never gonna want to listen to your podcast because peace, love, and bring a brat. It sounds very violent, or." And I go, "Well, it's not. If it says peace and love, you have to figure out there's always different sides to every story." And then the other one
Mm.
is, like just mentioning part of the logo. You really can't see it behind me, but it says Uncle Dave. And the Uncle Dave, again, people have uncles that are not as good as Uncle Dave. And Uncle Dave actually leads into where we're going to go is I'd gotten that nickname through the recovery space when I went out to um, talk to some politicians. And we were there, and the people were telling stories about how they lost their child through addiction disease. And but you see politicians, they only have so much time, and you could see when they disengage in the conversation, still polite, but not really engaging in the conversation. And you're probably too young to remember the E.F. Hutton moments. What that meant, there used to be a commercial here in the States, at least, where E.F. Hutton is a financial advisor, and you'd be like, E.F. Hutton says, and the world would stop. So Dave had an E.F. Hutton moment in that I was like, no, no, we need to stop this conversation right now. And I did cut off a woman, which I apologized, and I heard her story afterwards. But I said, we need to stop with the stories. That's not why we're up here. You better remember every one of these people have a story of why we're here, but we're here for your money.
Mm.
And I go, I'm not about, there's no guns here. So, but we want your funding. We need funding here in New York State in that instance. And we still need funding. So it all goes back to that mental wellness and substance disease, which usually comes in together, hand in hand. If you don't know how to handle some of the traumas that you might have gone through, or just life in general, you need you do things, right? There's a lot of things. I previously I've overate, right? So it doesn't matter that how I handle my mental wellness is eating. Give me some Twinkies, give me some Oreos and ice cream. Man, Dave is a happy boy. A month ago, I found out that Dave was a happy boy, but his heart was not. And you
Mm.
have to make those changes. So the same thing with mental wellness. You need to find your resources. What works for you might not always be healthy. And when we find the right healthy solutions, that becomes really more powerful. What are some of the
Yeah.
resources that you use, Jen?
Well, I want to like paddle back a little bit because
Yeah,
you were
sure.
just saying about like, the eating and stuff, and that's a coping mechanism. I also have a
Sure.
huge coping mechanism, which for me, it's humor. I'm kind of the Chandler Bing of the situation, which is terrible. I do that a lot, and I've started to do it less, especially ever since last year. I went into therapy, and I'm a huge advocate for therapy and seeking
Me
out
too.
help and all that. And I figured out, oh my God, this whole humor thing, this is just terrifying. Let's not do that anymore. Let's actually face the issues that you're dealing with because everyone has issues. I mean, when someone tells me, oh no, I'm good, I'm like, are you though? So, yeah, for me, that was really humor. And I've actually been writing an episode about it and also a chapter. And it was super confronting. Yeah, very confronting.
Yeah, no, I think that's what we have to do. One of my sayings that I always talk about is the monsters in our head are worse than the monsters under the bed we imagined.
Mm,
Um, and how we tackle the monsters to get through it. You can live with your monsters if you have to for the rest of your life, but what is that doing for you, and how's that working for you? So we need to address that. That's one of the things, and do it through therapy. A lot of the resources I found were through therapy by going through and asking the right questions, because sometimes we don't know the right questions to ask ourselves. That's why we need to speak to people or find that community to really have that going to that next level.
yeah, but that's also why people are finding you and me, for example, because we will be asking questions in a different way, thus activating their brain in a different way. And they'll be like, hold the phone. I haven't seen the whole thing like that just yet, but we're trying to do it in a way that's not belittling, which is very important because as soon as someone does it in a belittling way, you're like, wait, no, I don't want to listen to this. I don't want to go here because then it kind of feels like there's like a mom or dad kind of grounding you. And we don't want to do that. We want to make sure people that they're okay.
Yep, no, 100%. And that's one of the things you need to make that safe space.
Mm,
And that's why one therapist might not work well for you, and if they're not, I was lucky enough to find it, and I'm lucky enough to have a lot of people in my network who are therapists. Who, some people I would be like, nah, I'm not going to talk to them about it. I don't feel comfortable with it, right? So you have to feel,
mm.
it's very personalized. It's like anything else. It's like any other relationship you're in life. Is you need to feel comfortable and safe in that place.
Yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. I've also had the situation where I was like, this is not comfortable. And I can just be honest with them. And maybe that's also a cultural thing because here in the Netherlands, we're quite direct. So sometimes a bit snooty and kind of, harsh on things. But I would just say, hey, we are not a match. And I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to waste my time. And I really want to get some help because, oh boy, did I need help back in the past. Instead, every now and then still, I do think it's nice to have a little mental checkup, right?
Sure. Yeah, it's like any other part of health, right? So you wouldn't not go anywhere else for a checkup, like a physical health checkup, and when you do, you might have that big moment like I had last month, right? I thought I was relatively okay, a little overweight and things like that, but I didn't know the things that I didn't know. I didn't know that I had blockages on my heart. So
Mm,
it's the same way with mental wellness. Is depending on the stresses. Life is always going to keep throwing us so many different ways to, test us or knock us down, but we have to
yeah,
figure out ways to get up and get up healthily, not just getting up because we want to get up. That's a
yeah.
good start, but you need to build that resistance and the resilience.
Yeah, exactly. And how was that for you to find all that stuff out? What went through you as a person? Like what went through your brain and through your heart? How did you feel?
Yeah, well, the past month was different. Thank God I'm in the position where I'm at. But it's been a long ride to find resilience. I talk about the phoenix so often and getting out of the ashes, but there was a lot of times I would go back to the same ashes. I'd make mistakes earlier in my life, but in this instance with my health, the doctors were like, "Well, you have to change your diet." I go, "Well, I knew that." Once you told me about the severe blockages, like that's a easy thing. I go, "Done," and they were taking it that I was dismissive to them. And I go, no, you don't understand. It's already done. I go, It's not like I'm going to negotiate with you. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? I go, I know where I was. And, when I was on the table, I like watching medical programs, just different medical things, ER, the pit, right? All those type of programs. And when you show somebody doing an angiogram and you're like, oh, there's somebody's heart. Oh, that's cool, man. That is really sick. It's less sick when it's your heart and you're awake and you see them in your heart. Um,
Mm.
I can tell you that from experience. It was all cool. Oh, this is cool. This is cool. This is cool. You're going in and they went up my arm and you feel it a little bit. Then you don't feel anything. It's not, it's a little weird at the beginning. And then you're like laying there and I felt a little pressure and I'm like, it's getting a little worse. And I'm like, hey guys, just want to let you know this isn't feeling so good. And I'm watching them. He goes, yeah, I'm putting the stent in right now. And I'm like, oh, he goes, you should feel better in about 30 seconds. And in 30 seconds, I did. That's all I needed. Uh,
Um,
while for now, until I reduce weight to my level that I want to, I'm being really good. There's no snacks. There's no, uh, you know, I want to reduce it, and that's really my focus and the same thing with my mental wellness. When I first learned one of the ways to heal myself, called havening, I went to therapy, and this guy's telling me, you can touch yourself in a special way, and this and that, and it's really just rubbing your hands. So for people who can
yeah,
see it, it's like washing your hands. That's one way to reset yourself. It creates delta waves, and my audience already goes, yeah, I know, Dave, but it's really a personal reset button. Anytime you're feeling a little overwhelmed, you start rubbing your hands. And I did that. And he would teach me why that's one way to reduce stress, reduce some of the feelings around trauma that we've experienced. And eventually I got certified in it. I was like the 79th person in the world to be certified in the havening techniques. And I've worked with people, which is really crazy. If you don't come from that background, and you start teaching people how to get better for themselves, it's like, how do you do that? I'm like, here you go. And it's just led me to so many different opportunities. And through those
mhm,
opportunities, it's led so many more people to healing. And that's why I do what I do. And that's why, like, a podcast like this is so important, because I want people to know resources. I want your people to, know me as a resource. And
yeah,
also, we'll get to know you about your resources, but we also want to make sure that they're not alone, that there's always somebody out there. There's always another way to find, because I also attempted suicide. So I knew all the right things to do, but I wasn't doing them. So we need to do those activities, not just know we got to eat our veggies and our green beans and things like that. What we need to do is make sure that we're actually doing the work. And that includes mental wellness. And that was where I became different for my therapist. He was like, you're doing work when you're not in the therapy session, right? Therapy is for you, but that doesn't mean the only time you do therapy is during those moments of therapy. You can do
yeah.
therapy
No,
when you're, and because we get life. I mean, you get hit with life. What are you going to do? Oh, I got to call, in my case, Bill. No, he's not going to answer the phone. That's out of, it's it's not in session. So when we're in session, an emergency, sure, he'll answer the phone. But I got to learn how to cope for myself and how to manage and find out what triggers I had. That was
yeah,
where some power really comes into it. How about yourself?
yeah. Well, the thing that you just said about like rubbing your hands, I was thinking about it as you were speaking about it, and I kind of do that instinctively when I'm like
A lot of
thinking
people do.
about something or when I'm like a little stressed. I'm like, huh, huh, what's happening to me right now? And this really activated that in myself. And I was like, wait, okay, so there's a reason why people do that. See, this is why
You don't realize
I
it, but
need,
what it does
yeah,
is it creates. I'll tell you the science. So for those who really only believe, they don't want all this woo woo stuff. It creates delta waves in our brain. It triggers our amygdala to create delta
hmm,
waves, which are the same brain waves we use when we go to sleep. And in that way, there's other ways to help reduce the traumas and things like that. But that's why I call it the reset button. It doesn't fix anything, but it helps you reset because it starts throwing, all that oxytocin, all the good stuff, and the delta waves generate to it's a low brain wave that it starts to relax you. It tells your body you're safe and you're able to move forward through that.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh my, I did not know that. And here I am just instinctively rubbing my hands together. Oh my God. And this is why I need guests and people who know other things, because I do know a lot about psychology and how to handle a lot of the coping mechanisms and stuff, but these physical things, I really don't. And it's only together that we know more, right?
100%. We only can get as far as we're willing to see. And if you're standing on my shoulders or I stand on your shoulders, we're going to get to see further together. And that's where it's so important for us to have conversations like this.
Exactly, exactly. And I was also wondering, because everyone has their coping mechanisms, and I'm wondering, how did you get yours and how did I get mine? So, if this is too sensitive to talk about, please tell me that. And if you would like to be an open book for us, I would also highly appreciate that. So that's definitely,
Yeah.
within your. Mm?
Yeah, no, of course. No, I am an open book here because this is a conversation that's important. I just explained. I went to therapy, and the
Mm-hmm.
therapist, used a bunch of different techniques, including havening, and that's my go-to. When I'm going through some things, I need to go through it. Um,
Mm,
and to learn those techniques, but to keep using those techniques. So now, whenever I'm going through something, I use it. So to me, that's one of my biggest resources. I mean, I have other resources also. I do meditation. I like journaling. I write books. I'm an author. So a lot of my healing sometimes turns into a book. I start writing, and I don't know. It's these people who live inside of my head, in a way that I know it's not a real thing. It's a story. I start having the healing. I experienced XYZ. So because of that, I want to heal through XYZ, or I want somebody, among
mm,
the books I've written, one was called The Motorcycle Sage. It was dedicated to my ex-father-in-law, and but he rode motorcycles, but he also had some great wisdom that I would get from him, and we would talk, and I would give him some wisdom as well. But he was one of my role models that I really was so present with, and I appreciated him being part of that. That I was like, well, when I got divorced, and he would still reach out to me plenty of times, and I think about him often. He just recently transitioned, but I think of the things that we talked about, and I was just writing a book to honor him, and he was able to get the copy of the book. There's actually a second part of that book that's coming out. I don't know when this episode will go, but it's a
mm.
children's book about being with his one of his granddaughters. So it's just one of those things. There's people who comes into our lives and telling the story. So that's where I don't mind sharing the story. I don't mind sharing the story about my suicide attempt. I wasn't using my resources, and I was told it was a limiting belief. People told me that I was the cause. And if I was the cause, I was going to be out. I don't want to hurt anybody. That's not my nature. I'm not a person who wants to hurt anybody. And I was incorrect in the belief that I was told. But, since that piece, while I was in the act of suicide, I was told it's not my time. Go back and tell your story. And since that
Yeah.
point, I've done a TEDx. I've done I've helped people get on stages to tell their story, and I've written a bunch of books. So I don't know what story they wanted me to tell, including this podcast, is making sure stories are out there. They're so important.
Yes. Yes, definitely.
So,
I
how
can
about you?
totally relate to that. Yeah, well, like in our talk previously when we met each other and everything, that's also something that we very much clicked over because we both went through the same thing in different time frames. And yeah, for me as well, as I was attempting to commit suicide myself, I also kind of got the like, hey, you're not there yet. And yeah, I didn't think I would see the age of 30 because I was so freaking done. I did not like if you would have told me 10 years ago, Jen, you're going to be 32 and you're going to have a kick-ass podcast and you're going to meet all these amazing people, all these amazing faces, and you're going to learn so much about psychology and you're going to go through a huge learning curve of self-healing and healing with other people community-wise, I would have told you you were crazy. I would have said, no, I'm not going to be alive by then, basically. But the fact that I'm still here and that I get to do this with you and with all of those other cool people, I feel so grateful for that. And I can also see the coping mechanism of humor and like lately I've really realized where it came from because I grew up with a hugely narcissistic father and there was always a lot of tension in the air and there was a lot of parentification where I stepped in as a parent because to say very correctly, my parents were not really being parents. So someone had to step up, but I also had to cut the tension by being funny and by being kind and by being caring and by always carrying everyone's BS on my shoulders. So humor became a very big part of me. And because of my humor, everyone started thinking, oh, she's strong. She got this. You know, she'll be fine. Well, long story short, I was not. And that's okay. And I'm actually very happy that something told me that it wasn't my time yet and that I was being brought back and that now I get to do this and I get to learn so much. And, you know, in our talk, I told you, and I've been slowly posting about it as well, that I'm writing my first real manuscript. And you telling me as a writer yourself to, you know, a baby writer, saying like, oh, Jen, you have to continue with that. Now I'm slowly posting about, you know, writing the manuscript and writing about the healing arc and writing about all these psychology things and also diving more into that perspective of life. That was so motivating when you did that because I was like, okay, an actual person who's brought out books is telling you go. And I saw that as like a little angel, you know, sitting on my shoulder. And I really want to thank you for that. And it makes me kind of emotional.
Yeah, it's funny. So I didn't know that I could write a book, and I've had people go, "Oh, those books aren't great." I'm like, I didn't say they were. I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I'm not one of I'm not one of those people. But you want to know something? Each one of my books, I've had feedback from people who are like, "Wow," and that's all you want. It pleased me to write it or put some things together, and it pleased some other people. I
Yeah.
wasn't doing this to be perfect, and where you said you're a baby, so am I. In terms of of being an author, right? There's definitely more levels than where I'm at, but you want to know, I'm pretty happy with who I am, and that's goes back to that mental wellness. Is like be happy who you are, and so I want to hear more about your book and the growth that you're at.
Oh my God. Oh, I might be a little bit shy now.
Whatever you're comfortable with, right? Because
No, I should because you know there has to be a release next month and everything. So I kind of have to share about this because otherwise the book will never come into existence. And I'm looking at the manuscript as we're talking because I typed out things, I printed them, I really started writing a bit more, and today I worked on two other chapters. And yeah, I'm really grateful that I get to do that. So yeah, in the healing arc, I'm super comfortable with myself. I started giving 0 Fs, as the kids say.
yeah,
I'm like, you know what? I'm actually a pretty cool person. And of course, I got like coping mechanisms. And of course, I had to go through therapy after all that happened in my youth. And of course, you know, after a long-term relationship breaks off, you have to like re-find yourself and recenter a little bit. Of course. And that's fine. And at first, I didn't think that was fine. I was like, oh, this is a huge chaos. I am a chaos. I am a mess. But no, you're not a mess. You're a work in progress. And I think that
always,
goes the same for everyone.
always.
So yeah, now I hope that with the messaging that you and we put through, we can just show everyone, hey, we're all always a work in progress. You're never going to be perfect, but you can be content with who you are and with where you want to go. And you can look up to the next version of yourself. You can literally say, hey, this is kind of where I want to go. This is kind of who I want to become. And it's also really part of me because, for me, there's literally no acting in what I'm doing. I do want to become a little bit of a wise ass in terms of this because I want other people to get that okay to start healing and to start building themselves up again, basically.
Sure, you got to build. I mean, that's where peace and love come in, right? That's what
Yeah.
how I end usually every episode. How I explained it is that's your foundation, peace and love, whatever that means to you. You understand those definitions, and peace and love might be something today that tomorrow it'll be different for you. It is different stages. You only could see as far as you could see, and it really is something that we grow through. And the peace and love you might have at 30, 32 is not going to be where you're at, where I'm at 57. And, it's all these different pieces of learning and growing. I wish I knew the things I did now at 32. I would make a whole bunch of different mistakes, but I'd also have gone a different path with a lot of the things. So the earlier that you can learn this and find those people, like I said, I wish I met Lou years ago in my life because I would have benefited from that. But also, maybe why I wouldn't have been open to it at that point. You
Yeah.
have to also give ourselves grace. So the same thing with your book. If you don't make it next month, don't put that much pressure on you that it has to be. Put out deadlines for sure, but there is no finish line in life. The time that there's a finish line is when they put you in that wooden box or whatever, the silk lined box. That's your finish line. Other than that, tell the people you love them, apologize when you need to, and live the best life. Come out with the vision and know that whatever mistake you made, it can be corrected. That doesn't mean, and always give forgiveness. Forgiveness is so important that, but forgive yourself. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be, you might not forgive an ex, you might not, they might not forgive you. That's not the important part, is forgiving you is so important because
Yeah.
from there, you can move on with a different level of grace.
Exactly, exactly. And that's also what I called it in the manuscript. I actually yesterday I finalized a chapter about giving yourself some grace.
Nice.
Just don't be too hard on yourself. Everyone makes mistakes, and just give yourself the go for healing and for a little bit of self-love because you're a human and you deserve that. And if we don't tell ourselves, "Oh, I deserve this self-healing and self-love," you might go nuts. And that's how little Hitlers are born, basically.
Yeah, right. It's all those little pieces of. I didn't know. Self love was a thing until somebody asked me. I'd lived more than 50 years of my life. I thought I liked myself, but never really. Nobody ever asked, "Do you love yourself?" And hearing that question broke me down into
Oh,
tears because I didn't know. And at that point, I didn't love myself. Uh, and because of that, I didn't know that that was really an option. It wasn't like, oh, I don't love myself today. Yeah, okay, that's okay. Make mistakes and things like that. I didn't know that love myself when I really looked at it, what it looked like. And now I can honestly say I still don't like everything I do. I'll make mistakes, but I love myself. I love myself
oh,
a
that's
lot.
great. That's good. And through the loving of yourself, you will also give yourself grace for those mistakes.
Yep.
You'll handle things and yourself with grace, and you'll give yourself like a nice little timeout or a mental health day or, you know, the little pat on your shoulder and say, "Hey, buddy, today was a tough day. You've done well."
100%.
And without that, without the self-love and without the grace, chances are very small that you give yourself that. And I do think a lot of people, they don't grant themselves that little part.
Yep. So how do you give yourself grace? Well, what's some ways that you give yourself grace?
Yeah, for me, it's definitely through my daily yoga sessions. a lot of my listeners, they know this already. I do yoga every single day, except for Sundays, because on Sundays I get to sleep in, I get to relax a little bit, and I'm not allowed to work as much. I tend to be sometimes a bit of a workaholic, but it's really because I love what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I hear that from a lot of people in our field. They're like, I love the writing, I love all the stuff that we do, talking to people, and I'll go to conferences and blah blah blah. And I'm like, good for you, because that's actually very cool. But 6 days a week, I just really check in with myself. So I
Mm.
sit down, I start with some breathing, and that's where I tell myself, okay, you're allowed to fully let go. And actually, this morning, I did a yoga session and I got a migraine, and I was like, it's time for grace. It's time to, okay, handle this one meeting that I have. So I had one meeting of 1 hour. And I told my community members, honestly, I said, hey guys, we really have to clock out after an hour because I'm not feeling well. I checked in with myself and I'm getting a migraine. I think I've just been too busy. And those are the little things that I give myself grace in. So I really listen to my body and to my brain, and I try to combine the information, because all that you're getting is data. And the data might not be objectively true, but it is your data. Your body is telling you something, and other people are not living that experience. So I do feel like my body is giving me a lot of signals. And when I was younger, I was totally ignoring those. But now I'm like, oh, okay, migraine. Maybe I should just go lay down. And I lay down.
Well, I think that's so important, the fact that you have to recognize and listen to your body. It's that's one of the things that I've gotten better, that self-awareness, not only when I talk to people, but
Mhm.
how my body feels. The symbol, the signs, that, I'm missing something, that, to
Yeah.
then be able to fix things and identify it much differently.
Yeah. And how do you do that for yourself?
Well, I check in with myself all the time. So I use Havening. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
just as simple as playing some video games. A couple of minutes where I'm not thinking of things. This past month, the my podcast has really been one of those things uh, where I enjoy the conversation. This past month, when they told me after the heart surgery, they were like, "Hey, you got to sit for 6 weeks." I'm like, "Okay, what do I do?" And I did. I quit the job that I was working at, which was causing a lot of stress, and
Mhm.
I'm kind of figuring it out. But I knew that the podcast was always something that brought me great joy. So I always find things that bring me great joy, that don't have to do with ice cream or Oreos, uh, but that's where I'm diving myself into it. And I have friends who are like, "Man, you look differently. What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I, reduce some weight," and they go, "Nah, it's more than just that." And I'm really just doing the things and spending more time with myself. I had always spread myself too thin, and now, because of the limitations, for the time being at least, they I had to sit with myself. And, years ago, that was the worst person to sit with. I could sit with anybody except for myself. Now I love to sit with myself. I don't mind it. I'll watch a documentary. I don't know if it's that you get older, but especially this time of the year, there's a lot of historical documentaries, and I enjoy that. And
Mm.
then I'm also planning some trips in the future.
Please come to Europe.
I well, so obviously that's one of the places that I'd like to get back to. I've been to the Netherlands, and I'd like to come back, and maybe we'll figure out. Maybe we can have like a mental health symposium or something like that.
That would
I'm
be so
saying,
cool.
yeah.
That would be so cool. Oh my God, because we both have a different energy. We have like a complementary energy. And I think a lot of people need that because, I attract like a lot of women, of course, in my practice. And I do sometimes miss a little bit of male energy because I'm very female. I'm very girly. I mean, for the people on my podcast, you're not seeing me right now, but if you look at my visuals, I'm hella girly and I have a very big female energy. And sometimes I'm like, I should do something with a guy for once.
Well, let's talk about it. And the
Yeah.
the funny thing is while I do have a strong masculine energy, I also have a very feminine energy also that I don't mind embracing. I mean, I also have two girls, two young adult ladies. That so but I embrace that, and hey, look, I'd love to teach people in Europe about a little of the peace, love, and bring a bat philosophy. I actually have a bat, and I teach people about balance with that. I don't know how much you know about baseball, but when you hit the ball, when you hit it the right way, it just feels good. It doesn't mean it always
Yeah.
is successful. It just means it feels good, and there's a lot you could do with it. I've taught a lot of women how to swing a baseball bat. People who have never swung a baseball bat. My friend from South Africa, she came to the United States and she goes, I've never swung a baseball bat. I go, how is that possible? She's a martial arts expert. She's in physical fit, but she didn't know how to swing a baseball bat. And until I explained to her all the meanings behind the bat, the balance, the reason why you want to be level, it's all things that you apply to real life anyway. And when you can apply any of those things to real life and actually doing it, it's that experiential learning that takes us to new levels.
Well, actually, I have a little fun fact for you.
Sure.
When I was younger, I used to play baseball and I loved it. I did
Nice.
tournaments and everything. Yeah, like it's not super big over here, but I love being like physically fit and stuff. And I used to play it as like one of my favorite sports ever. I
I
also
could
in
see your face
Toronto.
and most people, it's really magical the times that I've used it. I've used it with veterans, where you just hit the
Mm,
baseball into a batting net that I have, and the feeling of it, the movement and things like that,
mm.
it really sets you up differently. And especially if you have any sort of background in doing it, but even if you don't, I'll get this again. I've taught people how to hit the baseball, and once you do it, it's such a wonderful feeling when you actually hit the ball that you've accomplished something.
Yeah, that's so cool. Oh, I have like a lot of inspiration for like an event we could throw together. So,
All right, then let's keep
dear,
doing it, man.
dear listeners and watchers, we are going to put this to the side, and David and I we're going to talk because this is
Yeah.
there's so much good energy going on right now. And I had a question for you, but that's like all lost.
Well, the funny thing is, I originally, when I first started working with the mental wellness, I said I want to help men. I really, with mental wellness, because men don't necessarily are open. Not that women are generally more open, and that's who's come to me more often than not is women. Even though I'm this guy and I wanted to help men, and I still do, um, the women had been more receptive to the messages, even though I'm not always speaking about traditional women topics. Now, there's things that I don't know. Like when my daughters come to me, Dad, what do I do with this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm not a woman. I can only know what happens in a book, but the psychological stuff that's my sweet spot. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of ways, and I bet you'd be surprised at how many people want to learn baseball and use the bat in the right way. Again, nonviolent. It's all about knowing your boundaries and hitting that sweet spot. Because I guess if you had your baseball right when you swing a baseball, and it might not be, it could be a line drive, right? It doesn't have to be a perfect home run, but when you hit it the best that you could, when you do something the best that you could, that becomes the home run.
Yeah, then you just feel great. And I think that's also in mental health, mental wellness, physical health. As long as you know that you've done the best that you could, and afterwards you give yourself some grace, you'll be good.
Yeah, 100%. And we just got to keep moving forward and finding different ways. And that's one of the strengths that I bring to the table, is just coming at different ways.
Yeah.
Of I know what how to do it, and I might use this technique when we were talking about techniques earlier. But then there's other times I might just say, I want you to read this poem for, every day in the morning, kind of Milton Erickson like hypnosis. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different ways. It's like those mantras. Do you have a mantra that you like to use?
Take up space with grace. I really
Mm.
like that one because
Yeah.
and I know it's a very cliche one, but a lot of people still don't know it actually. But take up space with grace means, okay, you're allowed to be your own person and you should take up your space. You should do things for yourself and that make you happy and all this, that gives you all the good feelings, but do it with a little bit of grace. You don't have to be too aggressive about it. You don't have to be too arrogant about it. Like I can sometimes be borderline arrogant a little bit because I genuinely think I know a lot of stuff, but I'm trying to do it with grace. I'm trying to not sound too belittling. I'm trying to be my own person and take up space without hurting people. A bit like that's one of my favorite ones. And you?
That's awesome. Yeah, with me, it's just like try to be as present as possible. When you're able to be as present, you can if anything that went in the past, that's a rear view mirror energy. It's in the past. We can feel bad, we can apologize, but if you spilled milk, you spilled milk. You got to own that, and that's it. You can own it in the today. You can't own it in the future. You own it right today, and when you own something like that, that is really where the power goes into things. So always stay in the present.
Yeah. Oh, those are two very good ones, actually. I feel like they complement each other very well. Yeah, that's so cool. And I used to have a little mantra thingy, like a little paper, half of like an A4 sheet. And that was after my breakup, which is nearly a year ago. And I read that to myself every evening. I don't know exactly anymore what it said, but maybe this helps for listeners. I do think it does because when you're going through tough times, which we all will go through at certain points in life, we have to ground ourselves quite literally. So I sat on the edge of my bed. I just sat upright and I took like 3 deep breaths. So you just do in and out, and that times three. And I would get like my little mantra sheet, and there would be one for mental health, physical health, love, and career.
Mm.
And all three very realistic because, I am still Dutch. I'm still part of the population that will scold you if you're doing something very stupid, but also very positive, very, okay, I'm allowed to let this stuff go. I'm allowed to take care of myself. I'm allowed to care about my business and I'm allowed to care for my brain. They were kind of like that. And really ground your feet and read them out loud to yourself when you think that you're a little lost. And it really brings you back to yourself because you have your feet on the floor, you're literally grounding, you're literally putting yourself back into your own presence, into your own body. And you're actually telling yourself that you're worth something because a lot of people know how to tell you that you're not worth a damn because they're frustrated. But that sounds like a them problem.
Yeah, it's not always about you. That's where we have to also sometimes depersonalize people's conversations.
Mm.
Look, I'm from New York, so we're pretty straightforward. Also, I guess maybe it's our Dutch history, right? New York has
Yeah.
that Dutch history. Could be. You want to know what when I was in the Netherlands, I thought people were the nicest. So I didn't get that harsh Dutch. It was very open and it was great. Yeah, yeah, it was great. But I also appreciate because I would rather you tell me, "Hey, Dave, you did something wrong," because that gives me an opportunity to be educated and then also to correct it. Now, if I continued the behavior that way, then it's on me. But it's not always, and we have to learn because you don't know what behaviors. If you just say, "Dave, you did something wrong," and you don't explain it to me, I might not have been aware of it. A lot of my mistakes, and again, I own my mistakes, but if I didn't know, I can't correct something I don't know. I only
Yeah.
know what I'm experiencing, and that's why communication is so important.
Yeah. No, definitely. Definitely. I'm
So,
loving this.
yeah, so I know what we're getting, and we could do this again. I mean, maybe we'll have other conversations, not only about the baseball thing. That's the great thing. I love creating content, and I know you do as well. So I love all these different ideas. I have programs like the funny thing is or maybe not so funny is when I was in the hospital I had my kids my two girls bring me my computer and I was cleaning up some books that I had written, and I have all these programs, and I keep looking at stuff, content I have, so we can definitely come on a call again. I'd love to come back onto your podcast and
Mm,
have that opportunity to kind of just talk it out and talk about the pedestals that we all want to be on or put ourselves on, that we should put ourselves on a pedestal, and what that means. If you want to be a pirate, I talk about being a pirate, and what we need to do to sometimes not rape and pillage, but we're gonna burn our boats so that way we got to cut our ties, right? You sometimes have to cut your ties to fight your way through things. So
yes.
there's a lot of different ways that I think I'd love to share with your audience, to the extent they want to hear me talk. So you'll
I'm
get
pretty
that
sure
treat.
they want that. Yes, they do. They love my duet episodes. So I know you guys love them. So yes, please. And I feel like I can learn so much from you. And I'm always highly enjoying these things with especially people who are, I'm sorry to say, but you're a little bit older than me. You have a little bit more life
100%.
experience. And I love learning from that. I'm always amazed by people who work on themselves and who have gone through a little bit more stuff than I have, or than the people in my audience who surprisingly are around 35 to 45, so they're a little bit older as well. But I do feel like we all as a collective, we can learn so much from one another, and I love that. I love that.
Well, there's plenty of stuff that you could teach me. Just because I'm older, I don't know it all, and the perspectives and all the different things that come up. While I've experienced some things, I wouldn't say my whole life I've been like this. If things are more polished, it's again that diamond in the rough. It's diamond in the rough is ugly when they pull it out of the mine. A diamond right out of the mine, it's raw, and they have to polish it out. I'm a little bit more polished, and you're polished for where you're at in life and the experiences that you had. I'm sure there's stories that you had that
Oh.
are that I'd be like, "Oh man, how'd she get through that? I don't know that I could get through that." And that's what we do, and that's why we all, you know, lean on each other and learn from each other.
Yeah, that's why we're here. And I also do think that's why we've been brought back. And we just get to share
100%.
it. We get to share it, and we get to talk with amazing people. We get to write amazing things. We get to gather knowledge and courage.
So as
Yeah.
we're kind of close out this episode for right now, so we don't overdo it, and we want to respect everybody's time. How can people find you? Right? They definitely need to find you.
Yeah, if you type with Genevieve on basically any social, I'm there. So I'm cross-posting my way around. All my episodes are on most of the podcast outlets. Yeah, basically that. I'm also on LinkedIn.
Okay,
So
yeah, yeah.
if anyone wants to reach out, please do, because I love that. I love hearing from people. I love answering questions. I love discussing things. I love getting into the nitty-gritty. And actually, right now, I'm also just opening up some spots where people can just send me voice memos, and we'll just get right into it. And it's going to be super fun. So that's the first time. So I'm also very nervous about
Just
that.
breathe and know that I'm here to support you as best as I can.
And also, where can my audience find you?
Well, the great thing is David Chametzky. That's a very unique name. So I'm really anywhere with that name. I don't really talk. I know, of course, the podcast Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat is on all major platforms. We're on YouTube as David Chametzky. So you can just find, once you find me, I'm all over. I'm a great Google search because there's a million places that you can find me and touch me social media wise and things like that.
Awesome. Okay, well, then everyone knows where to find us, and we're just gonna keep this ball rolling because I got some inspiration for us.
All
And,
right.
I'll just leave that as a cliffhanger for the listeners.
All right. So with that cliffhanger, we're definitely going to wish you both. Not trying to speak for you, Jen, but we're going to both wish you peace and love in your life. And when you bring that awesome thought. It's an acronym. Bring that awesome thought Be authentic. Be who you are today. Thank you so
I
much.
love
God
that.
bless.
Yes, God bless.
And that's where we'll leave today's conversation. First of all, a huge thank you to David for sharing his story, his wisdom, and his incredible openness. I think conversations like these remind us that none of us are meant to figure life out entirely on our own. If there is one thing I hope you take away from this episode, it's this. You don't have to be fully healed to be worthy of love, connection, rest, or support. You can be a work in progress and still build a beautiful life. Maybe your next step is booking that therapy appointment. Maybe it's finally talking to someone you trust. Maybe it's simply taking a nap, drinking some water, going outside, or giving yourself the same compassion you so freely give to everyone else. Whatever it is, let it be small, let it be honest, and let it count. If this episode resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might need to hear it too. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can always find me online at With Genevieve. I genuinely love hearing from you. Until next time, take up space with grace. Be gentle with yourself and for yourself. I'm mixing my words up right now. And remember, you're allowed to keep going, even if you have to do it softer than before. I'll talk to you soon, and I care about you. Bye-bye.